I want to look him straight in the eye, and I want to tell him what a cheap, lying, no good, rotten, four-flushing, low-life, snake-licking, dirt-eating, overstuffed, ignorant, blood-sucking, dog-kissing, brainless, hopeless, heartless, bug-eyed, stiff-legged, spotty-limbed, worm-headed, sack of monkey he is. Hallelujah! Holy! Where's the Tylenol?
Welcome, everyone, to a special Christmas edition of Covenants and Kingdoms. I am your host, Brad, and we have a special guest with us.
I am Baba Noel.
Baba
Hi.
Noel is with us all the way from the Arctic.
Well, it gets cold in Indian Springs, yes. It does get cold in Indian Springs sometimes. So, and we have, had a couple of snows in the last few years.
So a great place for Baba Noel to live.
Sure.
Thank you guys for joining us. And as always, we are brought to you by Baba Java Coffee, located here in Birmingham, Alabama. Specialty coffee roaster, 3 cafes in the area. Please come visit us. We're going to have winter menu items out soon. Maybe by the time you're hearing this, they will be released. So all your favorite peppermint and apple cider drinks you could have. But if you go on our website, babajavacoffee.com, and put in the code COVENANTS at checkout, you will receive 10% off your order. And we've got some great Christmas gifts for you. Everything from variety boxes to merchandise to roasted coffee. Great gifts to hand out.
I had a cup of brewed Winter Wonderblend this morning.
Oh,
I love it.
It's
so good.
It's very tasty.
I mean, really, it's so good. So please, the Winter Wonderblend, man, is so
Tasty.
good. Get you some. Get you 10 pounds of it right now. 10 pounds, because after winter, it's gone.
It's gone. No more.
Ever again.
Ever again.
So get 100 pounds.
Well, till next Christmas.
Well, don't tell that.
All right. So,
Have you ever wondered, Brad, on what date Jesus was actually born? The actual date.
yeah, well, I know now because we talked about it in our small group. But that has been a point of contention for a long time among Christians and scholars and historians.
I mean, it was December 25th, 0000.
That's what I assumed.
Right?
Yeah.
Of course.
You have, BC and
Yeah.
AD. So it makes there has to be a zero, right?
BC, BCE, you got
Yeah.
AD, CE.
Yeah.
But it's at zero. December 25th at 0 is when Jesus was born. So
That's what we're going to prove.
okay, thank you for joining us on this episode. Good night.
Okay. Merry Christmas. No. Of course, that is not the date he was born.
Well, probably not. I mean, it's very possible it was. We don't know the exact date. And even after this episode, we still don't know the exact date.
Right.
But a lot of people have conjectured that that we're going to talk about may be, in fact, and it's not just from the stars.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about astronomy,
Not astrology.
not astrology, and we're going to talk about the astronomical signs, and we're going to talk about some of the other signs that kind of point to it.
And some scriptural evidence.
Oh, absolutely.
It has always been interesting to me, though, that we call the Common Era the Year of Our Lord. That's what AD stands for in Latin. Yet most people believe that he was born in 3 AD. It would make sense if he was born, if that dividing line was the day of his birth. Anyway, I've always thought that was strange.
Yeah. Anyway, so on what day was Jesus actually born? Let's talk about some things. So again, we know the world's a mess. We know things aren't right. Things aren't right.
No.
Right? But the Bible gives us an answer to why things aren't right, and then how is the Lord going to fix those things that aren't right. Okay, we screwed it up, right? And then he's going to fix it. And so that's what the Bible's about. We know all that stuff. That's what we talk about. So let's talk a little bit about astronomy and what the Bible says about that. We're not talking about like horoscopes and zodiacs, astrology, predicting the future, like today is going to be, today I'm going to, like a Chinese fortune cookie type thing, right. Astrology. Yeah, that's not what we're going to do. No. We're going to talk about the Lord, Yahweh, the God of Israel. He created all things that we see. He created the signs, the stars and the moon and the sun, and the seasons and all the things that happen. And sometimes he gives us an idea of what he kind of calls a shot through those things, right? Yeah. So let's talk about some of those things. People throughout Christian history have talked about these, and remember in the Bible, in Matthew's account of Jesus' birth, which doesn't really say about the birth, but he talks about the magi that come. Some of the English translations say wise men. Well, the magi are from the east, right? They're pagan, right? Magi are ancient practitioners of mystical arts. That's what they are. That's where we get our word magic from, right? Makes from sense. The magi. Yeah. So these magi are following things that happen weird in the sky, and they read it. They had read the Hebrew scriptures. Remember, where were the Jews when they were in exile? Where were they?
Babylon.
They're in Babylon. They're in the east, right? And they were magi in the east in Babylon. So they learn the Hebrew scriptures from the Hebrew people. And so they're looking at the Hebrew scriptures, or looking at other things, or looking at the stars, and they find exactly where this child was born. And we'll read that account also, okay? So there's two books I'm basically using as my source for this. There's one called Ernest Martin's The Star That Astonished the World, okay? You can't get it on audiobooks anywhere. You have to buy a physical copy. Okay. It's interesting. He goes off the rails in some places, but it's interesting. And the second is Michael Heiser's Reversing Hermon, where I get a lot of this material from, kind of condensed. So we'll talk for both of these sources, and that's where I get everything from. So if you want to go read in more detail, probably more eloquently than me, then go read those two books. Okay. So Romans 10, it's a very familiar passage, okay? It's part of our Romans road. It's part of the way to salvation, we say. It's Paul explaining the why we need to be saved and how we are to be saved through Jesus, right? So let's read some of this passage, but there's a lot more to it according to some, and according to me too, according to a lot of people. All right, so let's read Romans 1, let's start there, and we're going to kind of go from there. So Romans 1 first, 18 through 20.
All right. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world, in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse.
Again, we've talked about this when we were talking about some of the passages about how Abraham followed the laws and the regulations and the statutes, right? So where did he get the law? How did he know what to follow? Well, because Paul's telling us right here, nature and creation reveals things about God, reveals the truths about God. Okay, and so Paul says in Romans 1, so even if they haven't heard, they're without excuse, right? Because of the things that nature reveals, okay? Romans 2, let's continue.
Verse 14, for when Gentiles who do not have the law by nature do what the law requires, they are a law to themselves, even though they do not have the law. They show that the work of the law is written on their hearts, while their conscience also bears witness, and their conflicting thoughts accuse or even excuse them on that day when, according to my gospel, God judges the secrets of men by Jesus Christ.
Okay, so there is a law written on people's hearts, according to Paul. Okay, and it's just, it makes sense because the people before Moses, the law was revealed to Moses, They knew right and wrong. They knew the things they're supposed to do and the things they're not supposed to do. Okay. The Bible says they sinned before then. So how can they sin if there was no law? Because the law is in our hearts. We know God inherently gives us a way, and we've talked about this so many times. God gives us a way to know right and wrong. Okay. So it's in our hearts. Okay.
Yeah.
So he reveals things to us in other ways than just writing it down for us. Okay. So let's see what Paul says in Romans 10.
All right, starting in verse 5. For Moses writes about the righteousness that is based on the law, that the person who does the commandments shall live by them. But the righteousness based on faith says, do not say in your heart, who will ascend into heaven, that is, to bring Christ down, or who will descend into the abyss, that is, to bring Christ up from the dead. But what does it say? The word is near you, in your mouth and in your heart, that is, the word of faith that we proclaim. Because if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart one believes and is justified, and with the mouth one confesses and is saved. For the scripture says, everyone who believes in him will not be put to shame. For there is no distinction between Jew and Greek, for the same Lord is Lord of all, bestowing his riches on all who call on him. For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved.
Okay, so we know that one, and that's very familiar.
Yeah.
Okay, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus, so there's a law. Okay, but everybody has this law written on their hearts, right? By faith, if we confess with our mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in our hearts that God raised him from the dead, he has to die for our sins before he's raised from the dead, you will be saved. For everyone who calls upon, and Paul says clearly, it doesn't matter if you're Jew or Gentile, Jew or Greek. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Everyone, the Lord is the Lord of all, bestowing his riches on all who call on him. Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. And we've talked about name theology and why that's so important. Okay, let's continue.
How then will they call on him whom they have not believed? And how were they to believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how are they to hear without someone preaching? And how are they to preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the good news. But they have not all obeyed the gospel. For Isaiah says, Lord, who has believed what he has heard from us? So faith comes from hearing, and hearing through the word of Christ. Okay,
so verse 18 says, have they not heard?
Indeed they have.
Right.
Yeah.
How did they hear? We the necessity of Jesus for salvation, right? By faith, knowing the laws in our hearts, we know we're supposed to obey the law, but we can't.
Yeah, we can't.
We don't.
We don't and we can't.
But through faith in Jesus, we can be made justified, right, to God, to be like we obeyed the law.
Yeah.
Right?
That's that imputation of Jesus' righteousness on us.
But then how are they supposed to know that's the truth without somebody telling them, without having heard? Okay? And this kind of points back to Romans 1, where he's going from here, right? Yeah. So let's read, he quotes Psalm 19, okay? Starting in verse 1, he quotes Psalm 19, 1 through 4.
The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There's no speech, nor are there words whose voice is not heard. Their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world.
So what's Paul saying here?
I mean, the heavens, the sky, proclaims the glory of God.
The heavens declare, Hashamayim, Hashamayim. The sky proclaims the glory of God. The sky proclaims his handiwork.
It's like his voice, almost. It's the way he's...
That's exactly what he's saying. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, there are no words whose voice is not heard. Their voice, so how in the world can the skies and the stars have a voice? What is he saying? What is the psalmist saying here? And Paul is quoting this.
Yeah.
Goes through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. Okay? So think about it. The heavens declare, the sky proclaims. Pours out speech, reveals knowledge. The heavens have a voice and speech and words that can be heard, since their message goes out through all the earth. It's clearly giving this communication, the dispensing of this cosmic knowledge to the heaven, right? The heavens. So some scholars think all of the story of God, the revelation of God, can be read through creation. I think that's a stretch.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't believe that necessarily. Some people do. So even the cross and everything, I think that's pushing it too much.
Yeah.
However, the Bible clearly says that there are things that creation can reveal. I mean, we just read several verses there.
Yeah.
Several verses. Okay. So Paul believes the news of Jesus coming is going to be made known to everyone. And it can be made known through the stars and the heavens, right?
Right.
So let's see their voice, Romans 10:18, their voice, the voice of those heavenly celestial objects, goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. This could have shown, and people could have known that a divine king was going to be born. And that's kind of, I think, part of what Paul is talking about here. All right?
Yeah.
And then Paul goes on to talk about, in Romans 10, as we just read through all those passages, what the coming of that divine king meant. The mystery that Paul has talked about, the mystery of the gospel that Paul has talked about in several epistles, right? That's one of the things he talks about. It's the plan of salvation. It's the mystery that was hidden from us, but now is revealed through Jesus Christ, right? That God himself made himself a divinity, the divinity, Yahweh, the creator of all. We've talked about all these different theologies about who Jesus is.
Yeah.
This creator has created all things, even the lesser Elohim, the lesser spiritual beings, the lesser divinities, right?
Yeah.
And he has made himself incarnate and became an actual man, okay? And this divine king, who all the prophecies have pointed to, is going to come, and Paul's saying that the creation is going to tell us how that's going to happen and when that's going to happen, okay? So some people believe that they're talking about the Magi and how the Magi followed the star, and that's part of it. But a lot of people believe that it goes beyond that, okay? That the Magi understood the bigger picture, and they saw these scriptures and they saw these things, and they knew when it was going to happen, so they knew to follow this particular sign, okay? And it's not just about the Magi, it's about everyone. And so John, the Apostle John, in Revelation 12 gives us a very strange passage that if you're reading through Revelation, it's just, you have this whole narrative, the heaven scenes, and he talks about the churches, then more heaven stuff, then the judgments start happening, and then in chapter 11 you got these weird two prophets. What does that mean? And you're talking about this Antichrist figure, the beast, and those things, and the two prophets are killed, and then they resurrected, and then after that story he throws this Revelation 12 in. I mean, it's just kind of out of nowhere.
It is.
And then he continues the narrative, kind of the cycles of the after that, the cycles of the judgments and things like that. Yeah. And then chapter 19, eventually the end comes. Yeah. All right. So, but let's go back to chapter 12, okay? So the first 7 verses, and this is where Martin, the star that astonished the world, kind of goes deep into this about what Revelation 12 is talking about. All right. So there's 2 things we have to understand that we're not saying, that people are going to say we're saying, okay? This is not messianic prophecy. Okay, this is not biblical messianic prophecy.
Revelation 12.
Revelation 12 is not. There's nothing that we know of in the Old Testament prophets that speak to this.
Right.
Okay, so number one, we're not saying this is Old Testament prophecy. Some people do, and some people read things into it that aren't there. They're just not. Okay, we're going to take it for what it says. All right.
Yeah.
So I think John knew, obviously John wrote Revelation after Jesus was born, right?
Yeah.
So in this revelation happens, and for some reason this is given to him. But let's get into it so we can see what we're talking about here. So let's read the first 7 verses of
Revelation 12.
Revelation 12.
And a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. she was pregnant and crying out in birth pains in the agony of giving birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads 7 diadems. His tail swept down 1/3 of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, she might devour it. She gave birth to a male child, one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, but her child was caught up to God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, in which she is to be nourished for 1,260 days.
Okay. So when you're reading this, again, we just read about in chapter 11 about the 2 witnesses, right? And they come and they're killed and they're resurrected and then they're gone. And we're talking about the beast and the false prophet and all those things. And then chapter 12, we get this. Then John writes this. Where does this come from? What is he talking about? Why does he put this here? All right. Well, I think he puts it here because he's telling about the things that just happened, like the history. He's just kind of going back. It's like when you're watching a TV show or a movie,
like
and
a
flashback scene, right? He's saying, okay, I know that was just weird what we just talked about. Here's why that happened. Okay, so I think so. But when we're reading these first few verses of Revelation 12, what does that sound like? Those signs. The great sign appeared, a woman clothed with the sun, moon under her feet. I mean, and on her head was 12 stars. These are astronomical phenomena.
Yeah.
Okay? It's signs in the heavens, right? I looked up at the heavens and I saw a woman clothed with the sun.
Yeah.
Okay? So these are definitely astronomical. All right? So the woman. Who is the woman? Well, the woman, many scholars have talked about this. All right? So there's many books about it. Just go research it. There's lots of stuff. These things that we're talking about is called astral prophecy. Okay? It's prophecy from the stars. Astral prophecy. Okay? So there's many people that have written about this. Okay? So the woman clearly gives birth to the Messiah. Okay? There's a quotation from the Psalms, the one who is to rule the nation with a rod of iron. That's Psalm 2, right? That's Jesus. That's he quotes Psalm 2, but also Revelation. He writes about that in other places in Revelation about ruling with a rod of iron. Revelation 19, Revelation 2. It's very clearly messianic. So the woman gives birth to the Messiah. So who gives birth to the Messiah? Well, there's 2 options. There's only 2 options about who gives birth to the Messiah. Okay, one is Israel. Is this sign Israel? Okay, a lot of people think it's like the faithful community, the Am of Israel, the faithful community, which existed both before and after the coming of Christ. Okay, we've talked about again the theory of Israel, and when we get into Jacob's blessing with Joseph and Ephraim, we're going to talk a whole lot more about that. Okay, and hopefully we'll understand exactly what the Bible is trying to talk about who Israel is and what Israel is, the people that are chosen, taken out and chosen by God. Okay, so anyway, faithful community of Israel. Israel is described in the Bible as the Virgin of Zion, the Virgin of Zion in the Old Testament, and produces the Messiah in fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy. That's easy stuff.
That's undisputed, yeah.
I mean, everybody knows that.
Yeah.
Right? 2 Kings 19:21, Isaiah 37:21, Jeremiah 14:17. There's many, many, many. So Israel's the Virgin of Zion. But when it comes to the actual birthing of the Messiah, there's an actual person, right? A virgin, Mary, right? So Mary is the Jewish girl who gives birth to Jesus. But Virgin Israel fits this best. So we're not talking about a specific woman. We're talking about Israel as we read the rest of Revelation 12. So, okay, if it was just the birth, then it could be Mary. But it's not just the birth. It's the ascension, the fleeing to the wilderness. That actually makes it Israel, the faithful Israel, even fit that more. Fit that better. My kids always say more better. They fit that better. So Virgin Israel is actually kind of, I think, the very first sign that John's talking about. Most people agree with that. Verse 6 is saturated with rich diversity of Old Testament, Jewish, and early Christian background. The woman flees from the dragon after she delivers this son, this Messiah figure. Okay, she flees so that the dragon will not annihilate her, will not kill her. Okay, will not consume her. This is not just a literal escape, whether of Christians fleeing the Roman siege of Jerusalem 66 to 70 AD, or as a remnant of Christians, Jews being protected from the Great Tribulation, like some of the eschatological views would say. Okay. So in verse 1 and 2, the woman represents the community of the faithful community of Israel, and that's just not that of the Old Testament epic necessarily, but the community. Okay, the actual people. Maybe even after Christ's resurrection. Okay. The woman is now on earth and not in heaven because she now represents the true people of God on earth. She escapes into the wilderness for protection because there she has a place prepared by God for this 1,260 days, whatever that means. Okay? We're not getting into eschatology. No. We're not getting into that today. That's in Revelation.
Yeah, we'll get there in about 10 years.
Yeah, maybe. All right. The same pattern of flight is observable with Elijah, Moses, who symbolized the church in Revelation 11, right? So Isaiah and other prophets do the same thing. This is really rich Old Testament imagery. So this points back to Israel as the Virgin of Zion. So we've got Mary and Israel being the one that most people think it's who John's talking about here. Okay. So the connection to Virgin Israel is important because the signage would have been decipherable to Jews at the time of Jesus' birth. At that time, Mary's circumstances would have been entirely unknown. I mean, she was nobody would have known Mary, except for that small group that actually knew her, right? And she shared that with them, right? So even the 12 stars, which if we look astronomically, obviously the Virgin is going to be the constellation Virgo. Makes sense, right? Yeah. Constellation Virgo. And Virgo does indeed have 12 stars above her head and all that. If you look at it textually, the 12 stars around the head are going to reference 12 tribes of Israel, right? And so that makes sense. If she is Israel, this represents the 12 tribes of Israel, right? So the woman is Virgin Israel, is Virgin Zion, Israel. And so verses 2 through 6 show that this clearly is a picture of Israel. And the 11 stars could represent Jacob, his wife, and the 11 tribes of Israel, who bow down to Joseph, who represents the 12th tribe. Okay, so we see an allusion to that with the story of Joseph, which we're going to get to soon in our main episodes, all right? The depiction could also represent the portrayal in the Jewish writings of Abraham, Sarah, and their progeny as sun, moon, and stars, okay? That's in some of the Second Temple literature, which we're not going to get into, all right? Jewish interpretations believe that the sons of Jacob were likened to stars in Genesis 37, right? To connote the indestructible nature of Israel. The stars appear so far from the earth and are immune from destruction of any earthly force, right? So I think it represents 12 tribes of Israel, and that gives more credence to that the Virgin Virgo is Israel, okay? The whole point is there's this rich tradition within ancient Jewish and Second Temple writings, of course, and of course the rabbinic community later on, that identify Israel as the Virgin of Zion. So this makes perfect sense here, okay? The woman was clothed with the sun is stock astronomical language of the day for the sun being in the middle of a constellation, okay? Again, I'm no astronomer. I've only taken one astronomy course in my life, okay?
Yeah.
And they didn't talk to us about this. But
you mean Jesus' birth wasn't just
it was not in the it was not Revelation 12 was not brought up in my astronomy course.
Shocker.
But anyway, that's stock astronomical language for this sun being in the middle of a constellation, okay? So while the sun is in the woman, in this Virgo, the moon is at her feet, which is what Revelation 12 said. For this to occur, the constellation of the woman must be, in astronomical language, on the ecliptic. Okay, that's the imaginary line in the sky that the sun and the moon follow in their journey through the constellations. Okay, as they move, again, this is all from Earth's perspective, right? This is from our standpoint. Okay, we know that the sun and the moon don't move through constellations; they move in relation to each other, right? So, from our perspective, in relation to these, that's the ecliptic is the line that the sun and the moon move throughout the skies. Okay. So go back to Psalm 19. Paul quotes Psalm 19 in his proof text. Hey, everybody should know that there's this divine king that's going to be born. Okay? Remember he says the voice goes out through all the earth. The stars and the celestial objects of Psalm 19 are communicating something here. In Paul's mind, that something is the birth of divine king. Okay? And then Paul goes on to to interpret why it's so important for people to hear about this divine king and what we should do with that information, right? Of course, it's Jesus, right? Yeah. All right. So there's this constellation Virgo. The sun is in the middle of her. The moon is at her feet. It's on the ecliptic, and that means that we need to start paying attention to Virgo. So Virgo is on this ecliptic, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the only time in the year that the sun could be in a position to clothe, be in the middle, the celestial woman Virgo, be in the midst of her, is when the sun is located between about 100 and 150 and 170 degrees on the ecliptic. This clothing of the woman by the sun occurs for a 20-day period each year. Okay, This 20-degree spread also could indicate the general time when Jesus was born. All right, so we're going to start to link what's in the sky and what John is describing with the real time during the year. This constellation of the Virgo of the Virgin giving birth, of course, would have been viewed by the Magi, and they would have known this. Okay, so these constellations we're talking about are ancient.
Yeah,
these aren't like new creations. They're not modern. Okay, these are ancient. So. All of the ancient peoples in the ancient Near East would have known these, okay? All the Babylonian people, the different Mesopotamian people, the Egyptians, the Greeks, they all had their different interpretations of this, right? But they kind of had the same constellations in mind, all right? It's really amazing. All right. So Isaiah 7:14, what does it say?
The Lord will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel.
So the Magi see this Virgo, and they see the sun clothing her.
Yeah,
she's with a son, and so they see this prophecy of Isaiah. So again, the Magi are from the east, Persia, Babylon, Mesopotamia, those areas, right?
Yeah.
And so the Jewish people were in captivity, where they're in exile there, right? And so when the Jewish people were in exile there, they would have shared ideas with these. We read in Daniel about, Daniel was part of the Magi at one point.
Oh, yeah.
So he would have been sharing ideas and sharing the Jewish scriptures. I'm sure he was trying to share the truth of Yahweh with these pagans, right? So we know that they would have known, passed on this knowledge. And so part of the Magi, what the Magi are following is exactly what these biblical prophecies are saying, okay? So even if we're ignorant of Isaiah 7:14, even if they were ignorant of Isaiah 7:14, this other astrotheological language would make sense to them, since they knew that Virgo had a strong associations with this mother goddess figure, all right? And then they obviously knew about the place of this king being born in Bethlehem, right? Yeah. So the detail of that the moon was located under her feet of the woman, we can't forget about that. Let's come back to that. The sun was in the Virgo constellation in the middle, while the moon is at her feet. Okay. Yeah. So because of the moon's behavior relative to the ecliptic and Virgo in any given year, this 20-day window narrows to roughly a 90-minute period in which to astronomically pinpoint the birth of a child of Revelation 12. Okay. So this is Jesus, the Messiah, okay? She will give birth to a male child, one who's to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, but her child was caught up to God into his throne. All right, so let's read Psalm 2, 7-9. This is what John is referencing here.
I will tell of the decree. The Lord said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, and the ends of the earth your possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron and dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel.
Okay, so this is obviously messianic.
Yeah.
Okay, and we know John believes this is messianic because he talks about this rod of iron in Revelation in two different places. All right, so let's read Revelation 2 and then Revelation 19 again, where John, the Apostle John, thinks this is pointing back to Psalm 2. Okay, so let's read that.
Revelation 2, starting verse 26. The one who conquers and who keeps my works until the end, to him I will give authority over the nations, and he will rule them with a rod of iron, as when earthen pots are broken in pieces, even as I myself have received authority from my Father. And I will give him the morning star. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches.
So It says exactly the same thing that Psalm 2 says, right?
Straightforward, yeah.
So this one who conquers and keeps my works until the end, I will give authority over the nations. Who is he talking about here? He's not talking about Jesus in that sentence. He's talking about the people, the people of Jesus.
And
That's the faithful, the faithful people. All right. What do we call that?
His bride, the church.
The church, but the church is grafted into this people called
Israel. I mean,
right. That's Romans 11.
Yeah.
Right. Paul talks about that. Okay. Revelation 19.
Verse 15, from his mouth comes a sharp sword in which to strike down the nations, and he will rule them with a rod of iron. He will tread the winepress of the fury of the wrath of God Almighty.
So again, John is talking about Jesus, and he's quoting Psalm 2. Okay. So in Revelation 2, he's talking about the people of God, like that's a Daniel 7 type thing where the people will rule with Jesus, right? The deification, glorification of the people who will rule with Jesus ruling over the nations with the rod of iron. Psalm 2. And then Revelation 19 is explicitly talking about this one who comes back on the white horse, who has a name written that nobody knows except himself. And then he also has other names. One is called righteousness. And then it also says in Revelation 19, the people, the bride, are clothed in white, which is the righteous deeds of the saints.
Yeah.
Okay. So this bride is with him, okay, in Revelation 19, just like he said in Revelation 2. And Jesus, this rider who has the sharp sword from his mouth, is going to rule the nations with the rod of iron. This is Jesus, okay? So then going back to Revelation 12, it references the birth and the ascension. So this is the birth of the Messiah from the virgin, right? This is an allusion to Psalm 2. We just talked about that. This child who would rule with a rod of iron. The Messiah would defeat God's enemies, that's Revelation 19, and be installed as ruler over all the nations with a rod of iron. The psalm allusion is also coupled with a description of the ascent of a child to heaven. So that's the resurrection and ascension, right? He's called up to heaven, okay? So he's about to die, he dies, and then resurrection and ascension language where he's called up to God's throne, okay? So John's wording here and the immediate context is designed to create the impression that it appeared as if the forces of evil, the dragon, would win the day, right? The dragon was waiting there to kill the child when it's born. It's going to be killed and devoured, but the resurrection and then the ascension resulted in victory for the Messiah, the child, who would eventually rule the nations with a rod of iron. The dragon was therefore defeated, and the nations that he controlled, okay? So John is kind of combining all these elements in just the space of a few verses, which is, it's just beautiful. It really is. Yeah. So we're very, very John is really crystal clear who the child is. It's Jesus. Okay, it's the Messiah. All right, the dragon. Scholars of the book of Revelation have long noted the connection of the dragon to the Old Testament terminology of the sea monster that symbolized chaos. Okay. So throughout the ancient Near East, the sea monster symbolized the war between good and evil, between the gods and chaos. In a similar fashion, the meaning of the abyss in 9:1-2, this builds on the fact that for the nations surrounding the Mediterranean basin, the sea was the unfathomable depths and chaos of death. Thus, the Leviathan, or the dragon, came to represent all the terrors of the sea, and thus the presence of evil and death. It also signified nations that stood against God and his people. Okay, that's because the nations, as we read throughout the story of the Bible, became those agents of chaos, okay, agents of destruction, agents of destroying the order that God wanted, which of course includes the Israel, right? Because he wanted to restore his original creation. That's what he wanted, okay? This is well-known imagery, all right? This is nothing, we talk about this all the time. So many people have talked about this throughout history, right? So the second sign is this red dragon, okay? And every time I read this, it makes me think of the Thomas Harris books, the Hannibal Lecter books, because he wrote one called Red Dragon, which was kind of the origins of the Hannibal Lecter type character. And then in that book, Red Dragon, they reference this famous painting by William Blake where the bad guy, the serial killer guy, was trying to make himself be like this great red dragon in these William Blake paintings. Anyway, For some reason, it makes me think of this. And it does, because, and it is, that's it. That's
it's embodiment of evil.
Real red dragon wants to kill, steal, and destroy, right?
Yeah.
That's the enemy, the thief.
Yeah.
That's who Jesus is talking about in John 10.
Correct.
The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. I've come that they might have life and have it more abundantly. That's that machaya that we talk about all the time, right? The difference between the death and life. Okay? Chaos, creation. That's the difference here. So the dragon represents the agent of chaos, okay? So the color red, it's red because this locates it in the southern sky. The fact that the dragon's tail sweeps away a third of the stars of the sky further points to a location that generally lacks stars compared to other locations in the sky. This again is in the south, in the region of what's called the abyss, okay? Another astronomical term, okay? The question we might pose now is, which constellation does John label as the red dragon? The dragon in the south, okay? It's not Draco. So there's three possibilities. It's not Draco because Draco is found at the North Pole, so it's not in the south, okay? So some people opt for Hydra, immediately above. That makes sense. Hydra is a sea monster, right?
Yeah.
Immediately above Hydra and accompanying it are the constellations of Corax and Crater, which have 7 and 10 stars respectively. Corax with 7, corresponding to the number of heads, lies closer to Virgo. On the other hand, others argue that the prototypical dragon in the sky could be ancient Scorpio. Okay, originally a larger set of stars than what the present Scorpio is. It was truly gigantic, even by celestial zodiac standards, since it originally consisted of 2 zodiacal signs, Libra claws, and Scorpio. So really, there's only 2 options. The Draco is not an option because it's not in the southern sky. It wouldn't be red. Okay, Hydra has an advantage of matching the description of the 7 heads atop the dragon. It's also conceived as a sea monster, which we've talked about. In Revelation 13, the next chapter, he talks about this beast that emerges from the sea, right? Which, again, makes us think of the Leviathan material of the Old Testament, like Isaiah 27:1. However, Hydra's not precisely on the ecliptic, so we have to ask ourselves if that matters. But it's adjacent to the ecliptic and only slightly below the woman. In other words, Hydra is not positioned directly under the feet of the woman waiting to devour the child. So the ecliptic problem is solved if we opt for Scorpio as John's reference point, okay? So Revelation 12 only has the dragon present. It stood before the woman. It doesn't really say it has to be directly under her feet. So both of these options could be possible, okay?
Yeah.
So we got 2 of those options that could be possible. The combination of signs, the woman, the sun in her midst, the moon in her feet, the dragon, whether it's right next to her at her feet or directly under her feet, these collection signs are not rare. I mean, we see these all the time, right? But there are other celestial portents that are not mentioned by John in Revelation 12 that were present at Jesus' birth, okay? So these other things would have been taken as indications of the birth of a divine king to both Jews and Gentiles. One of the problems that you get with people trying to use Revelation 12 to plot the second coming, okay, second coming, not the first coming, is they'll go with Revelation 12, but they'll miss these other portent signs, okay? So if you put the elements of Revelation 12 into an astronomy program, and lots of people have done that, there are people who take what's actually recorded in Revelation 12 as a reference point, okay? This is not, again, what you actually have to look at the sky, because the Magi aren't just seeing what's in John's writing in Revelation 12, because they wouldn't have had that yet, right? They would have known just about the signs, right?
Of course.
They're looking at the sky, and there's other things going on to recreate the scene. So if you plug these things that John wrote into the astronomy program, they're going to just stick out, and they'll be meaningful and deep ways to both Jews and Gentiles when it comes to the birth of divine king. All right. Okay. So again, we talked about these things aren't necessarily rare. It does narrow a little bit, but once we talk about these other signs, okay, it's gonna really narrow it to a date. Okay, so we're going to talk about those things. Okay, the constellation directly above the head of Virgo. Again, this is not mentioned in Revelation 12. Okay, if we're looking at the sky like the Magi did, the constellation above the head of Virgo is Leo, the lion. The lion was the symbol associated with the tribe of Judah, from which the Messiah would come. Okay, so let's read Genesis 49, 9 through 10.
Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He stooped down, he crouched as a lion, and as a lioness who dares rouse him. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him. And to him shall be the obedience of the peoples.
In other words, the peoples, the Goyim, Hagoyim, the nations. Okay, so this is where the Lion of Judah imagery comes from. It's Torah, all right? The Lion King is associated with Judah. Okay, all right. Revelation 5:5. What does John say?
Judah, the root of David, who has conquered.
Okay, so this is also important to Gentiles. It was the chief head sign of the zodiac and has special importance in astronomical circles. All right, I'm going to quote this exactly. Leo was considered a royal constellation since it was dominated by the star Regulus. Regulus would have also been in the picture, the recreation of the circumstances of Revelation 12. So the star Regulus was known by astrologers as the king star. It was big and bright. So we have this king constellation, Leo, the Lion of Judah, and the star Regulus in Leo. The status of Regulus in Leo is important because on one of the possible dates of the Messianic birth, it came in conjunction with Jupiter. Okay? Jupiter, as the largest planet, was considered the king planet. Okay? And this astrotheological thinking, this astral theological thinking in the first century, as a result, the constellation Leo, the messianic sign of the Lion of Judah, who literally read the heavens, had two conjoined signs of the royal birth within it. In other words, if you're a magi, you're familiar with all the astronomical thinking, and you're familiar with the Hebrew scriptures, which we know they would have known because they went to Bethlehem. Mm-hmm. If you're looking at the sign, you've got a virgin with 12 stars, the sun in her midst, the moon in her feet, the dragon next to her. Then above, you've got Leo the lion. Mm-hmm. Okay? It's the symbol of the tribe of Judah. So we've got all these things. In the middle of that, you have Jupiter, the king planet, and Regulus, the king star, overlapping. They're conjoined right now. Remember, this is a 90-minute window when all these things are there. So the combination of these astronomical signs produces a unique set of circumstances which can only be accounted by one date, all right? And this date, drum roll please.
In the Gregorian calendar.
September 11th, 3 BC.
That's the end of the podcast, right? Done. That's the date. So, for all of you out here there who put your Christmas decorations up in September, you're right.
Listen, you can literally put them up as early as
August, maybe now.
August 31st, I would say.
Please don't tell my wife that.
There's a lot of wives out there like, yes, I have scriptural precedent now.
So we'll read. Yeah,
that is very interesting. What's also interesting to think about is because you've said the 90-minute window, which means you may get to this later, but all that had to happen as the Magi were going from Jerusalem down to Bethlehem, because I don't know how far that walk is on the back of a camel. But,
right. Well, remember,
because they're seeing all this kind of form and come together in real time on their journey.
Yeah.
But it doesn't come together.
So
until
remember, the Magi don't come.
I know. Yeah, I know.
Right when the king is born, right?
It's after he's born.
Right.
Yes.
So they don't come for probably 2 years. They don't get there till 2 years. But they see this happening, and then they start following something.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's the part that's interesting.
And then as they see, we will talk about this, the retrograde motion of Jupiter. The retrograde motion of Jupiter, how it does weird things at certain times.
Gotcha.
And that's probably what the Magi are following. And we'll talk about that.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
All right.
So,
all right, September 11th, 3
most
BC.
scholars put the birth at 4 BC because of Herod, because Josephus talks, the way Josephus talks, Herod would have died it would have been in 4 BC. Okay. You would have Herod dying after the birth because remember the Magi come 1 or 2 years after, okay, depending on how old Jesus was, we don't know. The scripture doesn't say they came to visit the manager, they came later when he was a child. Exactly. Okay, so they hung around Bethlehem for a while because, Mary was recovering and then they were just there with relatives. And we'll talk in another podcast about Christmas, which our next one will be, we'll talk about why some of the myths about the Christmas story and what the Bible actually says about them. Okay. So anyway, the terminology for the child comes in the narrative. But again, this is very well known. Everybody knows this. This is not novel at all. But we know that the gifts that the Magi give come later because of the terminology of the child. About Jesus wasn't a babe, an infant. He was a child. Yeah. Okay. So despite the objections of many to September 11th, 3 BC, and again, this has been around for a while, a 1 BC date of Herod's death is indeed possible and actually quite plausible. For recent research into how a 1 BC date for the birth of Herod is historically coherent, there's this, see Orman Edwards' Herodian Chronology, Palestine Exploration Quarterly 114.1. Okay, so he writes, and Andrew Steinman's When Did Herod Reign? Okay. The former article focus on numismatic coins evidence for reconsidering how Herod's dates are calculated and understood. The latter casts a wider net for data leading to 1 BC death, while the chronicling problems with the 4 BC consensus, while also chronicling the problems with the 4 BC consensus. Okay, so the main issue people have is because most people think Herod died at 4 BC, or so Jesus couldn't have been born 3
After
BC.
That. Yeah.
So, but a lot of people don't think that's necessarily true. It's based on things that might not necessarily be true. It's basically set in stone, according to some people.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be set in stone.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, all right. Jupiter. We have this Jupiter Regulus conjunction in Leo. Jupiter is important because we talked about it's the king star. So a lot of people, it's the best explanation for the star in Matthew 2, whose perceived moment was tracked by the Magi. Okay. Jupiter is well known for what astronomers called retrograde motion, the appearance of movement back and forth in the night sky. Jupiter's first conjunction with Regulus began on September 14th, 3 BC, and continued through September 11th, 3 BC. Then on December 1st, 3 BC, Jupiter stopped its normal course through the fixed stars and began its annual retrogression. In doing so, it once again headed towards the star Regulus. Then on February 17th of 2 BC, the two were reunited. So it's moving a lot. It's moving a lot between 3 BC and 2 BC. So it's possible. So astronomers have known this for a long time. This is nothing new. The perception of Jupiter's movement for just about everybody who kind of tracks these things is the best explanation for the star of Matthew 2. Okay, you have all this going on, and the Messiah is born, and then the Magi are looking at this and they see this weird movement of Jupiter with Regulus. So, and of course, it takes them a while. They're from maybe Babylon or somewhere in the east. They don't have a plane they can get on.
Right.
They don't go to the Baghdad airport and get on the plane and
no
hit
magic carpets.
Well, I don't think Baghdad goes to Jerusalem anyway. But anyway, they can't go from Baghdad to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And then go over to Bethlehem.
That flight exists.
But anyway, they can't. So they have to ride whatever, camels or donkeys or walk.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time. So you have all this going on. It takes them a while, but the timing is right. The Magi embark on their journey a year or so after Jesus was actually born, and this is what they're looking at. In Matthew 2:11, where Jesus is referred to with the Greek paidion as opposed to the brephos in Luke 1:41. The former can be used of an infant or toddler, the paidion. The latter is only used of infants or children in utero. Okay?
So you're saying Matthew uses the older.
Yeah, they're older
older
kids.
term.
It's like a toddler.
Yeah.
And the other one's like an infant.
Yeah, and that's what Luke refers to.
Yeah. The Magi saw the star rising above the eastern horizon, and in August 12th, 3 BC, Jupiter rose as a morning star, which soon came into conjunction with Venus. If the Magi began their own journey towards Jerusalem near this time, this apparent westward motion of Jupiter each day could have indicated to the Magi to proceed in the same westward direction towards Jerusalem. Martin, who we've talked about before, follows this by noting that the Magi could have been following Jupiter in the example it was setting. Okay, the Bible says the star went ahead of them. Okay, so the Magi were following it westward. Okay, and they knew Micah 5:2 because they knew they were looking towards Bethlehem where it will be born. Right. Now we don't know if they when they went and asked Herod, even though they had Micah 5:2, were they just being cryptic or they were just kind of poking for information, getting more information? We don't know. You can read it different ways. But anyway, the star comes to a halt in the heavens, Matthew 2:9, Jupiter stopped its motion and stood over where the young child was. In a word, the celestial body became stationary, which is exactly what Jupiter did at that point. Pretty cool, huh?
It is interesting.
Okay. So with all this stuff going on, we already said the date was September 11th, 3 BC. Okay. It's also important to note that this is not just reading the stars. This is another important note, another important date in Jewish history. Okay. This is also in 3 BC, September 11th was also Rosh Hashanah, which began the Feast of Trumpets. Okay. So on Tishri 1, the Rosh Hashanah, which in the rabbinic period came to be viewed as the beginning of the new year, the Jewish New Year. So every Jewish New Year, we have Rosh Hashanah, Tishri 1, right? So God's eschatological judgment of the people is expected to fall on this day. The New Year trumpet also proclaimed hope in the ongoing and ultimate kingship of God and God's judgment and reward according to the people's deeds and in Israel's final restoration. Okay? So that's from the Babylonian Talmud. That's from other rabbinical writings. So the astronomical reconstruction of the circumstances of Revelation 12 that produced September 3rd is that Rosh Hashanah, Tishri 1. It was also the dates that the ancient kings and rulers of Judah reckon as their inauguration day. Okay? This was followed consistently in the time of Solomon, Jeremiah, and Ezra. So that's a powerful piece of evidence for the astronomical reading of Revelation 12, 1 through 7, as the celestial sign, also lining up with the date, this inaugural date of the king coming. Okay? Too many coincidences here.
Yeah.
Okay? Too many things that are coinciding and aligning. Okay? Jewish tradition also held that the Day of Trumpets was the day that commemorated the beginning of the world.
I never heard that before.
This was Jewish tradition, and that was the very first day on the human calendar. So Jewish historian Theodore Gester writes, Judaism regards New Year's Day not merely as an anniversary of creation, but more importantly, as a renewal of it. This is when the world is reborn. Okay? So the first step looking at this is to understand the Jewish calendar. All right? So this Tishri, the beginning of Tishri, Rosh Hashanah, occurs on the first, second days of Tishri. So we know that doesn't coincide with our January 1st of the Gregorian calendar, right?
Right.
We know that. So, but just think about it. Actually, they had basically, so in Israel today, they basically have 3 calendars. Okay. So remember in Exodus, God commands that the first day of the year be
Passover.
Right, indicating Passover.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So that's Nisan. So, and we have a reference to that in Esther 3:7. So you have a beginning of the year Nisan. You have you have Rosh Hashanah, which is still celebrated, and then you have the Gregorian calendar. They celebrate Gregorian calendar like the rest of the world, right? Yeah. So anyway, but in our lives we have different calendars too, right?
Yeah.
You got the fiscal calendar,
yeah,
right? Which for some, with our businesses, it's January 1st, but with some, it's October 1st, right? So you got fiscal calendar. You got a school year calendar. The school year doesn't start on January 1st. It doesn't. So we had a school year calendar. We've got a football season calendar.
It's very important where we live.
Right? Very, very important here in Alabama. Okay.
Wow. From the peanut gallery, I think.
We have
a lot of, for our hunting friends, they stick to that hunting calendar.
So we have lots of different calendars that we follow. So the same thing with Jewish people. They have these different calendars, and Tishri 1 and 2, Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the Jewish New Year. Okay. The agricultural calendar that had Tishri as the first month is the oldest, predating Exodus. Okay, the biblical text contains hints of this older calendar in certain passages that describe the ending of the year, like Exodus 23:16 and 34:22. Whereas Tishri marked the fall season, the end of the year was marked by a feast of ingathering. Okay, the important points for what we're talking about here: the most ancient Israelite calendar began with Tishri, which fell in the fall season with the harvest after the rains had produced the fall crop. Okay. This month was considered a memorial of creation. Why? Because Genesis had Adam and Eve in this garden full of harvest. Yeah. Okay. The availability of food to Adam and Eve, the creation must have begun in the harvest season. This is how the Jews reason this tradition. So the earliest Hebrew calendar began with the year in harvest season, the fall harvest season. Hence, Tishri fell in the fall harvest. The logic produces the idea that the Israelite New Year signaled a renewal of creation. Okay, so Tishri 1 happens September 11th, right? It gives us Rosh Hashanah on that date. Tishri 1, the renewal of creation is happening with the coming of this Messiah, the inauguration of this birth of this king, this divine king. Okay. Also, one more important coincidence happens. So let's read Genesis 7 and see what else happens at this time.
Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters came upon the earth, and Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him went into the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Of clean animals and of animals that are not clean, and of birds and of everything that creeps on the ground, 2 and 2, male and female, went into the ark with Noah, as God had commanded Noah. And after 7 days the waters of the flood came upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of heavens were opened.
Okay, so Noah had turned 600 during this time, all right, when the flood began. It was the 600th year of Noah's life in the second month. He had already turned 600 by the time the second month came around. So just keep that in the back of our mind, okay? As the flood waters were subsiding, just after the dove was relieved from the ark, Genesis 8 says this, starting in verse 13.
In the 601st year, in the 1st month, the 1st day of the month, the waters were dried from the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. In the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth had dried out. Then God said to Noah, "Go out from the ark, you and your wife, and your sons' wives with you."
Okay, so Noah and his family had left the ark by the 2nd month of the year. And remember, it said on the 1st month of the 1st day of the year, and Noah's 601st.
He was 600. Oh, yeah, and then the next one, he was 601.
It's when it dried up, or when it started to dry.
Yeah.
Why is this noteworthy? Well, because traditionally Noah's birthday is Tishri 1.
Oh.
So the 1st day of the month, he turned 600. When the flood began, he had just turned 600.
Yeah.
When the flood subsided, he had just turned 601. Why is this important? Because the ark is quoted by different authors, including Peter, to be a representation of Jesus and the salvation of Jesus. So Jesus is the better Noah. He's the better Adam. He's the better Noah. Okay? So he's a representation of what Noah represents. Okay? He's righteous, and he represents salvation. That's what his name is, Yeshua. Okay? So this Tishri 1 is very important. And ancient Jewish readers would have known, okay? They would have known all that, right? And they would have seen. So let's read 1 Peter 3, 18 through 22. See what Peter says about it.
For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the spirit, in which he went and proclaimed to the spirits in prison, because they formerly did not obey, when God's patience waited in the days of Noah, while the ark was being prepared, in which a few, that is, 8 persons, were brought safely through water. Baptism, which corresponds to this, now saves you, not as a removal of dirt from the body, but as an appeal to God for a good conscience through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who has gone into heaven and is at the right hand of God, with angels, authorities, and powers having been subjected to him.
Okay, so Peter's saying that as the flood saved these people, okay, and did some kind of spiritual... There was some kind of spiritual warfare stuff going on here.
Yeah.
So Jesus is just like that, and just like the waters of baptism, through the waters, this spiritual power was defeated. These spiritual evil powers were defeated and made subject to Jesus, okay? He's equating what happened with Noah with what happened with Jesus, and saying Jesus is the ultimate example of what happened with Noah, okay? Because with Jesus, he ultimately defeated the angels, authorities, and powers and made them subject to him. So Jesus is the ultimate Noah. He's Noah on steroids. He's going to be the ultimate bringer of the judgment, not just in this case the flood to cleanse the world, but the shepherd king. Okay, this new Noah will take care of the entire problem. Okay, he's going to fix what was wrong. It's a sweeping solution that begins, and it's going to begin on this date, which the stars and is highlighted by Tishri 1.
Yeah.
So the heavens telegraph in 3 BC the identity of the better Noah, the ultimate Noah, Jesus. He was born from Noah's own bloodline, Luke 3:36.
Yeah.
With the birth of Jesus, the permanent reversal of all the things, the evil, the sin, were going to be made right. Okay, we're ignorant of how the corruption of humanity would have happened. So anyway, Genesis 3 and Genesis 6 are the evil, the depravity of humanity. The flood took care of part of it, but the ultimate fixer of all the problems of sin and human depravity and all the evils and the evil forces behind it are fixed by Jesus. And Peter is saying that everything was put and subjected to him.
Yeah.
The nations, he would rule the nations with a rod of iron. Okay. And then in Revelation 2, he said that, and in Daniel 7, he said that not only is he going to rule the nations, they were going to be his inheritance. Who else is going to rule with him? His people. Right?
Amen.
Okay.
So when was the Messiah actually born?
September 11th, 3 BC. It was Tishri 1 was the date of Noah's birth, and Jesus was the ultimate Noah, was the better Noah. Okay. Tishri 1 proclaimed the coming of kings, Rosh Hashanah. Okay. It was a date of the renewal of creation. Okay. All the astronomical signs from Revelation 12 point to this one date. So you take all these things together, and September 11th, 3 BC is the date that Jesus was born.
Mic drop.
Seriously, is that really the date? Does it really matter? No.
It doesn't.
No. It doesn't. It's fun to talk about.
It is.
It's not important theologically. No, it is important theologically, all those things we talked about, how he is the better Noah, and he is the one that represents the king, the messianic king. But
it's important that we lay the groundwork of it is possible to use creation to. Absolutely.
That's what Paul was saying.
And that's definitely what the Magi did. They used God's creation to see the Messiah.
Yeah. These pagan Magi are practitioners of these magical arts.
Yeah.
They follow the Bible and God's creation to find this king that's coming.
Exactly.
And they found him.
Yeah.
And they gave him gifts.
It's amazing.
So, Merry Christmas. Happy Christmas.
Are you British now?
Happy Christmas. And we hope you have a great holiday season with you and your family. And thanks for joining us for this holiday season.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.